Hey Buckaroos, welcome back to Musicom Academy, another lesson. This one is going to be the culmination of all of the lessons. I can't remember if there was 8 or 9 or 10, format by format that we were doing, giving you the numbers of what typical stations, the entire playlist, how many recurrents, and those things, the ones that are just before this particular lesson. This one is going to be the culmination in that I'm going to do that final screen and talk about everything that's on that final screen that I was showing you. And I'm going to sort them a bunch of different ways and talk about them after we're sorting them. One of the things that I noticed, because this was really interesting to me, and I've been doing this for over 50 years, and there's some stuff on here was like, wow, that's a surprise. So if you're not a PD or you're a new PD or you've been a PD, there's probably something in here that you're going to get out of it, or at least, which I'm trying to do for this particular lesson, is to have this lesson as a frame of reference for you to go back to. At some point, just remember that it's there. You can go back to and go, you know what, I'm trying to build format X, which I've never done before. What's the kind of general rule for this, for the amount of songs and all that sort of stuff? So let's go back to the computer one more time and go through these. Okay, so before we get into this, I just want to go through a few things that sort of have come up along the way here as I've been doing these. One in particular, which, is really important to figure with these numbers. I was reminded by one of the people who view these lessons, and she wrote in and said that, a lot of times songs, and she was talking about urban AC, that the songs that they would be playing might be an album cut, and probably the software is going to pick that up as a new song because it has no reference. It knows it's not a recurrent, it knows it's not a gold, so more than likely it would probably categorize it as a current song when it may not be a current song. It may be, an album cut. And that was especially apparent to me as I, read that what she wrote, in one of the comment sections of one of the lessons. And then I looked down here where the AAA is down at the bottom, where it's 632 current titles. Well, more than likely, they're probably not. I don't even know where you'd get 632 current titles in this day and age. I mean, it's just crazy. But you could very easily get a bunch of album cuts off of major albums. If you're a AAA station, you might be playing off cuts from Springsteen or U2 or whoever. That's probably where this 632 comes from. And as a guess, that is probably where the Urban AC 52 comes from. It's probably, in our normal terms of current titles, this is probably not 52. CHR may not also be 52, although probably it would be because they're going to have a pretty decent list, and and they might turn it over in the middle of the week. Again, this is a 7-day period, but different stations refresh their list on different days. Some may do it on Monday. Someone may change their list on a Wednesday, at which point a whole bunch of different songs would come in and out. So this 57 probably is 57 current titles. This 52 probably is the same. Same thing with hot AC. Okay, so let's get that out of the way. And secondly, I want to point you to this left-hand column that I added in. As you know, these are the top 12 markets that I've been doing, and I was picking out AC stations, and these are their songs that they play and the numbers, and each format down the road. This column here is how many of those stations are sitting in the top 10. For some of the overall numbers here, I took the top 12 markets and I went out of the top 10. I maybe go down to number 12 or number 13, but this is pure top 10s. So the reason I put this in here, because if you look and you go, all right, here, AC stations in the top 12 markets, in the top 10 ranking, there's 14 of them. So there's more than one per market. Urban AC, 12 markets, there's 11 of them. Classic hits, there's 11 of them. CHR, there's 11 of them. Now, before I go any further, let me point this out. These three formats right here, almost all of these tended to be in the top 5. When you get into the CHRs, almost none of these are top 5. They tended to be in the second 5. In other words, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Usually they were like number 8, 9, 10 in a market. In other words, these three formats do extremely well, as does this one. They're not in every market, so there's less of them in the top 12 markets, but they tended to be somewhere in the top 5. So classic rock, AC, urban AC, and classic hits These are like top 5 formats when they're there. The rest of these formats, they're in the top 10. They may or may not be in the top 5. I think for country, maybe there's one of them. Hot AC, I think there's one of them. The rest are, down on the lower end of the top 10. Still a good place to be. If you got 40 stations in the market, being number 9 is not that bad. But the reason I'm pointing this out to you is that, and I know this occurs in a bunch of different markets, if you're looking here, let's just take these 5. If you're in a market where one of these formats doesn't exist for some reason, you might want to seriously consider doing that format. This is the one that's probably going to be most likely to not exist in your market. And I think a lot of programmers shy away from this because simply they don't know how to do it. They don't know what it should sound like, they don't like the music, or they're just not in tune with urban music, and particularly can maybe hear the difference between urban, which there's not many of, there's only 4 of them, versus urban AC, which there's 11 of them. Okay, big difference in format there, gigantic actually. So I point all that out so, keep referring back to this column as we go through, these numbers and things. Now, one more thing about this that, is intertwined, and I'm going to jump to this column, the gold titles, for just a second, only because, I averaged them all, which is almost meaningless, really, because there's so many different formats here, at 409. But then I just decided to average these 4 formats that I was telling you about: AC, urban AC, classic hits, and classic rock, the ones that are almost always top 5. And for the amount of gold titles that they do, this is the average of them, 495. So just picture 500 gold. That's kind of where they are. So somewhere between 400 and 500 songs, that would be the sweet spot for these 4 formats. And we'll get to that as we go forward. Now let's move over to this column here, overall plays. I mean, in many ways, it's sort of meaningless. The only thing it sort of shows here is possibly who has more commercials playing. So maybe these stations that don't play a lot of songs have more commercials, but then it could just as easily be they let their personalities talk more, or maybe they have a few shows that, are talk heavy. Who knows? It could be anything here. But, just to show you that, CHR obviously plays the most amount of songs, then comes country. These are 2 very current formats. Hot AC also, again, sort of a current format, and urban is a current type format. And maybe it's just as simple as the current songs today are shorter than the songs from yesteryear. I don't know the answer, but I'm pointing it out to you. Now, let's resort this, and we'll sort on the unique titles. Is there anything that we can glean from this? Well, I guess for AAA, you can definitely glean that this is 1,047 totally different unique titles. But for unique titles, you can, maybe pull something out of this. Again, I'm just winging here, as I look at the numbers, but Active Rock, 798 unique titles. These tend to be gold stations, really. They're the rock and roll gold stations that have some current music. As you can see, 36 titles and only a few recurrent. So they're playing, and and the gold is 739. They're playing a lot of gold and a lot of different titles. So this is a lot of songs, a lot of variety type station. Urban AC, same thing. Classic rock, same thing, pretty high. Adult hits, again, adult hits is pretty much like classic hits, not that different really, except this, to my ear, this just leans a little bit more rocky. Again, they have no recurrence and they only have 3 currents, so these are 526 different unique titles, of which 523 of them are gold. So again, they're playing a lot of variety. And when you look at this, it's good to kind of look over and go, well, how they doing ratings wise? Well, Urban AC is doing pretty good. Classic Rock is doing pretty good. The rest, not so much. And then you get down into the middle of the pack, AC, classic hits in the 400s. Again, you can take a lot out of this in 100 different ways, and all 100 of the different ways could be 100% wrong. I'm just, these things are sticking out to me as I stare at this, and I wonder about them. It's like, a lot of variety there. I wonder if that helps them. Let's do another sort. Current titles. Okay, well, when you look at this and you look at AAA, 632, again, there's no way these are current titles. There's just got to be a lot of album cuts in here. So you kind of need to eliminate this one. Next one down is urban, 93 current titles. Some of these might be album cuts, I would think, but maybe not. Maybe they just really have really wide lists, and that really isn't working for them all that well. To me, when I look at this, only 4 of them, knowing that urban used to be incredibly strong in the top 10 markets, like they were killers normally, but now urban AC is taking that crown. You'd much rather be an urban AC than an urban radio station. And this might be part of the reason, which you drop down to urban AC, it's 52. That's pretty much half of the amount of current songs as an urban. Think of that for a second. And if you want to jump over to the gold, 300 versus 639, they have half the currents and twice the amount of gold. Anyway, we'll just keep going here. 57, there's 11 CHRs, so in the top 10, which is good. Urban AC, they play 52 currents. There's 11 of those, of which almost all of these are top 5, most of them. And then as you go through and you start coming down through here, there's only a few of these formats, and then you kick up with 12 current songs for classic rock, which are super strong format. Only 7 for AC, 3 for adult hits, none for classic hits. And again, these are strong formats right here, and they don't play very many currents. I would wonder about that. I'd look at this and go, in this day and age, for whatever reason, could be the age of the audience, you don't have a shot at young people, or it just could be that, the songs that are out now, for the most part, just don't do anything for most people. It's in one ear, out the other, no passion. Could very well be. I would definitely be thinking about it and bearing it in mind. Let's resort again and go for the recurrents. And I'm sure these recurrents are actually recurrent numbers. There's probably no debate about these because, they've tried and true. The computer program is going to be picking them up from history, so that it's going to know what they are. They would be absolutely real recurrents. 55 of them on urban. Urban, not that strong of a format. 46 on country in this instance. In the majors, not the mediums or the smaller markets, but in the majors, not that strong of a format. There's only 7 of them out of the top 12 markets. And I don't think any of these, as I recall, none of these are in the top 5. They're all 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Okay? Again, not a bad place to be, but these are not, super banging the door down formats. 47. Now you get into the CHR at 34. There's 11 of those. As I mentioned, they're all, ranking 6 to 10. Hot AC, we're down to 24 recurrents. Active rock, there's only 3 of them, but they are all actually pretty strong stations. They were top 5s. I think 2 out of the 3 of those were top 5, and they have 23. Going down to less recurrents, 16 and 12, these are the 2 strong formats. These 2 are super strong formats, as is classic rock, which has none, and as is classic hits, which has none. Sort of a correlation between the lesser the amount of recurrence that you play, in this instance, the stronger the format. I do want to throw something out here that I would know, probably most of you, unless you're somewhere around my age and have been in radio a long time, you would not know, but it's, it's something to think about. When I first got into radio, and for many, many, many years, a thing called recurrent just didn't exist. Where before it used to be that you would be playing a current song, and maybe it's the weekend, has a super strong song, you beat it into the ground, you pound the crap out of it, and then what would happen before was it would then get rested, like it wouldn't get played for like 6 months. It would just go into like a limbo, and then it would come back in as a gold, more than likely probably a power gold. That's kind of the way it used to be, but now there's these recurrents. So it begs the question, today, in this day and age, if you wanted to go a different way in your programming and you wanted to gamble a little bit and think outside of the box, maybe it makes sense, even if you had a CHR, to not play any recurrents, to just take the songs out of the currents, beat the crap out of them, and at that point where they start to get fried, pull them out completely and rest them, and don't play them at all for another 6 months, and then bring them back. Because they'll probably, when you bring them back, they'll be like, oh, wow, hey, oh yeah, forgot about that song. Just a thought. Let's move on to the gold titles. Here they are, most to least. These are the most amount of gold titles down to the least. And again, keep looking over at this column as to how many these formats are strong. And let's go through them because I think it's good to go through these sort of one by one because some of these have a little anomalies to them. So starting with 739 gold titles, there's only 3 of these in the top 10. But I will say that there's only 3 of these stations, period, in the top 12. 3 companies have decided to take the shot with active rock, and this is what they're doing. In other words, they're doing this many titles, this many currents, this many recurrents, and this many, gold, and the averaging of this year. But the 3 that are trying it are successful. They're in the top 10 in the top 12 markets. I hope this is making sense to me. In other words, what I'm trying to say is in the top 12 markets, there's no more than 3. There isn't a 4th one or a 5th one or 8th one or 10th one, and they don't do well. They're like number 16 or 20. There's not. There's only 3 of them. And all 3 of them actually do pretty decently, and this is what they do. So I just thought I'd point that out. Next in line at 639 gold titles is Urban AC, and as you can see, Urban AC kills. Virtually all of these are top 5 radio stations in virtually every single market, and there's 11 of them. 639 gold. Adult hits, I think there was only 2. There might have been 3 of these, as I recall. And they play a lot of gold. Primarily these are jack radio stations, and with a variety. So obviously they're going to play a lot of gold. That's their whole thrust. We play what we want, variety, you could hear anything, that type of deal. So they're going to be having to play a lot of different cuts, okay? Classic rock is classic rock, 500. They're over the 500 mark for gold titles, and there's 9 of them, and they also almost always are incredibly strong in the markets that they're in. AC, okay, well, AC goes without saying. AC kills pretty much everywhere, and in a lot of the markets, there's more than one of them. And 416 is the amount of gold. Next down, classic hits, 407, okay? And there's 11 of those. So what I'm trying to get at here, and I guess I have sort of an agenda because I just believe this. I believe it pretty strongly. If you just look at here, okay, and you go like, well, they got a lot of gold. Somewhere between 400 and 700 titles. A lot of gold. And you look over here and you go, okay, there's 11 of them, 14 of them, 9 of them, 11 of them, 3 of them, but these are all really strong stations. It's pretty hard not to come away with the conclusion that perhaps playing a lot of gold is a good thing. It's just kind of, I don't know how else to interpret this, really. The only other format that really sticks out that, would go against that concept would be CHR, but then CHR is going to be 180 degrees from a gold radio station, and certainly if there's not one in your market, you should absolutely be doing a CHR because, there's always room for a CHR. The question is, in this day and age, how strong are they going to be? Everybody builds one, but, again, the brunt of them are not top 5. They just aren't. And they only play 130 songs. In country, which is twice the amount of gold songs as a CHR, this is country in this day and age for these radio stations is essentially a CHR, except they're playing country music. They're not playing, pop music. In the current top 40 stuff, they're playing country. But, the rotations and everything else are pretty darn similar. Hot AC also pretty much in that same boat. It's just that this music is a little bit different. I guess another way to put this is all 3 of these formats, country, Hot AC, and CHR, in these markets, in the top 12 markets, are essentially mechanically doing almost the exact same thing. The difference is they're choosing different songs to play. CHR is playing different songs than Hot AC is for sure playing different songs than the country stations. And when you sit and look and you go like, well, maybe that's not, all that good of a way to go. Unless you're the only one and you can stand by yourself, you don't have any competitor in that format at all, and therefore you're going to be okay. You're not going to be killing, you're not going to be knocking the doors down, but you're going to make a living and it's going to be decent. I don't know how meaningful this last column is. I mean, I think almost all of it is obvious if you've been in radio. The more current radio stations are going to have more current average years, and the gold stations, they're all down at the bottom end of the spectrum. Which is interesting, though, to me, is that Urban AC and AC, they're pretty close to the 2,000 year mark. So basically they're 20, 22 years back. Maybe that's the sweet spot, 20 years back. Maybe it's something somebody should be considering. Maybe you look at these formats and go, you know, I wonder if I should lean back toward 20 years back rather than just 3 years back and 4 years back and 5 years back and 6 years back. Maybe I should not go the full 20 if you want to be a current radio station, but maybe I should open it up a little bit more. Just a thought. I know that's what I would be thinking. Overall, I tend to think that people are not as stupid as sometimes radio people think they are. You know, you sit and look at a ppm coming in the meters over and over and over again, and you go, you know, okay, hey, they don't like this, and you just keep tightening things down and tightening and tightening and tightening. And, you know, and you're playing to the ppm, but you're moving farther and farther and farther away from someone who actually wants to listen to the radio. You're killing them in tiny little baby steps, where these other radio stations are not in that realm, and they're doing really, really well. Just a thought. I just throw it out to you. By all means, save this lesson for a reference point for the music that are in different formats and how the starting point should be if you're going to build one, and then start messing with it on your own. But at least you're going to be in the ballpark. As always, subscribe to the channel. We're somewhere around 750, 780, somewhere in there of subscribers. Again, trying to get to that 1,000 mark. That's a big YouTube deal. Love to be able to get to it. Not that far off now. I didn't think we'd get this far, actually, because this is such a hugely niche little channel here. You know, there's not a whole lot of PDs in the world, really, especially in this day and age. You know, now, you know, one PD gets to handle like 90 stations. So, you know, that's cut down the amount dramatically, but we're getting there. So by all means, subscribe, hit the like button, hit that bell for new notifications of new lessons. And until that next lesson, see ya!